It's time for the Trading Stocks Made Easy podcast. Each week, Trading Stocks Made Easy demystifies stock trading and investing so you can profit big. And now, here's the host of Trading Stocks Made Easy, the wealthy investor, Tyrone Jackson.
And welcome to another great episode of Trading Stocks Made Easy. I'm Tyrone Jackson. I'm your host, and I am your stock market and wealth building coach. Thank you for having me into your life. And I want to thank you for all of you who download these episodes on iTunes and subscribe to our show on iTunes, or who are on our Wealthy Investor email list, because we love our following, and I love you as fans and all of the wonderful emails we get. It's my opportunity to say thank you. Now, a lot of times on this show, I'll go into what my favorite stocks are, but every once in a while, if you're a regular fan of Trading Stocks Made Easy, you know that I bring you an expert where we talk about the inner game. Now, there's a lot that we do in the stock market when we talk about stocks and top-line revenues and dividends and how to set up your trading account, because it is, in fact, the largest and greatest financial game in the world, because you can own shares in the companies that are most successful, and that helps bring you wealth, and if you're a covered call writer, certainly residual income. But, there's a lot that actually goes into buying a stock before you click that mouse inside your trading account. There's the inner game of wealth. Now, if you listen to the show regularly, very often I talk about my past and my family, and you know that I was raised by a single mother who really essentially struggled to make ends meet month after month after month. Now, my mother always told me, get a job that pays you overtime. That was like our wealth plan, because at least if you could make some overtime, you stood a chance of getting ahead. And that was a message that I heard over and over and over when I was actually growing up. And that spilled into my adult life, even though I was a person who really had a great amount of ambition. You see, when I was growing up, I always saw myself as someone who could do great things in the world. And for whatever reason, I had this drive, this need and desire to do big and great things. I always felt that. But it wasn't until I got into my early 20s that I started to learn that I kind of had these competing desires. This desire to be really influential in the world, but yet raised with the ideas of if you could just pay the bills in life, that's sort of kind of how life is. So I was also a psychology major in college, so I had enough awareness about how my mind worked and how my feelings worked. And everybody knows psychology is the study of the human mind, which also connects you to your feelings. So the inner part of the game that I had to learn to master, the pieces of the puzzle that I had to learn to work with, was this constant conflict between my head, which was telling me I should be great, but my feelings, which kept telling me I should be small. And a lot of those feelings were inherited from not only my mother, but my family. So before I could find something that I could be very, very financially successful at, I had to take a good inner look over time, not just once, not just twice, but over a period of time, as to why I felt so conflicted. And I didn't know why, but I knew I needed to let go of something. And I needed to let go of someone else's desire of what was meant for me in life. Now, I share that story with you because some of you listening out there have those same kind of inner conflicts. And as it turns out, I wasn't the only person who had this ability to detach and learn, or had that need to want to move past what I was taught in my family to the life that I really wanted. And that's a very deep and personal inner journey. Well, one of my favorite people I met in the seminar world when I became a successful seminar speaker was a woman named Dana Garrison. And what was so great about Dana was she had done a lot of work in this area for her, and she also had done a lot of work with her clients, and she's very good at helping people become acquainted with some of those inner blocks so they could have the life that they deserve financially and in the material world. And so on this episode, we're going to really talk a little bit more about that inner game and some of the things that you should become aware of, because some of your family history and ideas and thoughts and patterns could hold you back from manifesting very large sums of money, and yes, even being a successful stock market trader. So Dana and I were recently at a live event in which I had the opportunity to snag an interview with her, and you're going to hear that interview right after this commercial break.
You're listening to the Trading Stocks Made Easy podcast. Want to learn more about how to trade and invest in the stock market? Visit thewealthyinvestor.net/products. That's thewealthyinvestor.net/products and order the Wealthy Investor's Guide to Stock Market Success audio series. This easy-to-follow 5-CD audio series and manual will teach you the basics of how to buy and sell stocks, how to collect quarterly dividends for life, plus hidden income generating strategies like covered call writing and volatility trading. Start creating financial freedom right now. Get the financial education you need to get ahead. Visit thewealthyinvestor.net/products.
Wealthy Investor, Wealthy Investor, wealthyinvestorradio.com.
And welcome back to Trading Stocks Made Easy. Yes, make sure you visit thewealthyinvestor.net and sign up for our free email newsletter. That's where I'm really going to be able to send you some of the latest trades, and you can join us hopefully on one of my live teleconference calls. I look forward to seeing you there. Now, in this episode, I was telling you a little bit before the commercial about Dana Garrison and the inner work, and she's come up with this idea of family entanglement. And I want to share this interview with her, with you, because we were at a live event for people who produce podcasts on iTunes, like my company does. And I said, you know, we're both here. Can I snag an interview with us? So you're going to hear this live interview at this event. But what Dana Garrison has to say about the inner game of wealth is what you should really focus on. Here now, my interview with Dana Garrison. Hey, it's Tyrone Jackson with Trading Stocks Made Easy, and I am here with one of my favorite people in the world, Miss Dana Garrison. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you so much for having me.
And just for all of you who are listening around the world, I want you to know one thing, that we are live from Texas, and I ran into you at this event, and I said to myself, can I have an interview with you? And you, of course, said,
absolutely.
Okay, so let's get right into it. You know, on this show, we really talk about trading and how to execute trades, mostly covered calls and volatility trading. But what I always try to stress is what goes on behind the trade. Before we click that mouse, there's actually a psychology involved in the psychology of wealth building, and you know something about that. Just tell our audience briefly who you are and how you came across this concept we're going to talk about called family entanglement.
You bet. So I'm Dana Garrison. I help entrepreneurs who want to break through that 6-figure or 7-figure ceiling. And one of the things I've seen in the years that I've had of helping people who are wanting to build their business or build their wealth is that one of the things that holds people back the most is their inner game. It's not lack of knowledge of what to do, but we've got inner blocks that actually hold us back from getting results. And I learned about this through a very strange way. I started out as a therapist, and in that time period, I learned that about 10% of what shows up in our life comes from our conscious mind and conscious thoughts, and 90% of what shows up in our lives comes from our unconscious thoughts and habits and patterns. And so I went out and I started studying the best of the best of the best in the world of how do you actually transform unconscious habits and patterns, and I developed something called family entanglement work. And it was during a time period that I had a mystery illness that no doctor could diagnose, and I was sick with it for 10 years. And after 10 years of searching, family entanglement work was the only thing that was able to get rid of my symptoms. And then I thought, can I actually use this on my business?
Yes.
Can I address my business blocks? Can I address my money blocks with this? And sure enough, I was able to grow a sold-out practice in a month and a half and break through 6 figures in 9 months.
Great. Well, let's get right to it, because a lot of people think the psychology of trading is just, hey, Tyrone, tell me what stocks to buy. But there really is an inner game. And can you just briefly explain that to our audience?
Yeah, so something that we don't really think about or talk about much is that we actually inherit generational patterns around money and around success. And so one of the things you want to start looking at is, think about the generations back. Think about your parents, your grandparents and aunts and uncles, great-grandparents, great-aunts and uncles. Who struggled around money? Who struggled around, business or wealth? Because those are some of the things that will actually cause an entanglement pattern to go down the generations and actually affect us when we're trying to build our wealth. So that's one of the things that you want to pay attention to is, if you are not getting the kind of results that you feel like you should be getting or that you want to be getting, there might be a root cause you haven't looked at yet and haven't addressed yet. And one thing that's really important to remember, it's not your fault. So the blame stops here.
Right. Now, I always say wealth is a series of positive habits. So people who invest in stocks or invest in real estate, very often it's a habit that's taught to them. Is that somehow the concept of habits? Is it somehow related to family entanglement?
Well, interestingly enough, family entanglements are passed down in a couple of different ways. One is through epigenetics. So when your relatives have gone through a stressful experience, let's say around money, that impacts how they feel and how they think about money, but that impact goes in their epigenomes, and epigenomes affect your DNA. So that's getting passed down generation to generation, and it can skip generations and it can skip people, but you might be affected by it. And it's also getting passed down in the unconscious habits and patterns. So sure enough, when great-grandpa went through the Great Depression, lost a lot of money, that impacts how he thinks, feels, and acts around money. And all of that sort of unconscious habit and patterning gets passed down generation to generation.
That is really, really powerful. Now, I've known you for a number of years now, and I've actually had the opportunity to share a stage with you, and I've seen transformations even at live events with people.
Yes.
They have awakenings even then. Let's move forward just for a moment and explain to us what kind of results you've gotten for your clients around money, or you've helped them to achieve, because a lot of your clients make these very dramatic changes. Explain that.
Yeah, so I had a client named Jasmine who owned a few elder care facilities, and she was having trouble filling her second facility. But guess what? She's still paying the staff, she's still paying the rent, so it was creating a lot of loss for her. When we looked in her family tree, I saw that her dad was a traveling salesman, and he would go and make a lot of sales and never collect the payments. And so he had this weird relationship around money where he wasn't getting payments, and his business ultimately failed. She was entangled with that pattern. Once we did some work to disentangle her from that, she was able to fill that second facility within a month, and she broke through six figures as well. So she went from a 5-figure business to a 6-figure business because she was able to break free from that old patterning.
Well, it's so interesting because in the work that I do with people around stock market trading and investing, one of the patterns that I see is, everyone wants like a huge windfall. So they wind up kind of, for lack of a better term, rather than actually investing their money, they use the stock market to almost like play the lottery. And one of the things I have found is if the person comes from a background where there's a lot of deprivation, the more the tendency to buy a $3 stock and hope it goes to 150. If you've come from a background where, let's say financially you were middle class, you were okay, and now you're learning how to put money to work, there's less of that desire to take this extreme risk to get so far so quickly. What's your response to that? I mean, you've worked with a lot of people psychodynamically around money.
People have a very interesting relationship around money, usually based on their family's past. And so when we don't look at that and begin to address it, it owns us and it controls us, and it's controlling us silently and we don't realize it. And so you can actually be making bad choices and bad decisions when you haven't taken the time to take a look at this piece. And once you do take a look at it and address it, what's interesting is it's not even that you're doing something different. The example of Jasmine I gave you, she didn't go out and knock on more doors. She didn't post up flyers. She didn't make more phone calls. She did nothing with marketing and sales. And these people just came and started calling her, talking to her, and wanting to send their relatives to her facility. So there's this thing around a lack of unconscious permission for abundance that needed to be addressed. Once we lifted that and she had permission for abundance, people just started showing up. So there's this interesting effect of what we start to attract and how our behaviors also can begin to change too when we address this.
More with my live interview with Dana Garrison right after this.
You're listening to the Trading Stocks Made Easy podcast. Want to learn more about how to trade and invest in the stock market? Visit thewealthyinvestor.net/products. That's thewealthyinvestor.net/products and order the Wealthy Investor's Guide to Stock Market Success audio series. This easy-to-follow 5-CD audio series and manual will teach you the basics of how to buy and sell stocks, how to collect quarterly dividends for life, plus hidden income generating strategies like covered call writing and volatility trading. Start creating financial freedom right now. Get the financial education you need to get ahead. Visit thewealthyinvestor.net/products.
Wealthy Investor, Wealthy Investor, WealthyInvestorRadio.com.
And now let's pick up with more of my interview with Dana Garrison. This is really very, very powerful stuff that you're talking about. And I just want to go a little bit further. Is that also to say that people who are enormously successful, I know you've recently interviewed some people who are enormously successful, have they untangled from their money issues, which is what catapults them further? Would that be a fair thing to say?
Well, I know with the folks that I've worked with, there's a gentleman that I work with named Jeff, and he was starting a new business, and he had already gone bankrupt in the past, and he wanted to make sure that it did not happen with his new business because it was really painful for him. And when we looked in his family tree, there was a lot of different issues that can cause issues with money and money wanting to either come in or stick around. Once we addressed it, he was able to break through and make $3 million the next year. So, and even more after that. So the numbers can get quite big. It can get quite large. And I'm sorry, what was the last part of your question?
No, it was really just...
Let me make sure I make sure I answered it.
No, of the people who you've seen who have colossal success.
Yeah.
They've untangled, or some people, not everyone needs to untangle. Some people have got to smooth the family tree, right?
Absolutely. And just because there's been some issues in the family tree doesn't mean that you happen to get the entanglement. But it's really important to look at and pay attention to, because one of the biggest tragedies is that when something isn't going well for us, and maybe it's not going well for us for a few months or 6 months or even a year or more, we start to think it's us. We start to blame ourselves. We start to think, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe I should just leave this and quit. Maybe this isn't my thing. But guess what? A lot of that stuff comes from your family patterning. So it's not you. It's just the entanglement. When you address it, suddenly you just start seeing money starts coming in, or customers start coming in, trades could start working better. And so I don't want people to look at the results they're getting in their life and simply think, I'm not cut out for this.
Right.
You want to really realize that entanglements play a part. And once you can look at it and see it, then you've got power over it, and then you can realize, that's not me. That's just the entanglement speaking.
You know, it's so interesting because one of the things that I was raised, I talk about on this show all the time, I was raised by a single mother who struggled, really struggled just to pay the bills. Today, my life is radically different. You know, I live to Malibu, I have the place in upstate New York, and, I've learned how to trade and be successful and help other people. And one of the things that I had to learn and detach from was, my mother used to say, when you grow up, get a job where you can make more overtime, but remember, the more you make, the more they take. She was referring to the IRS. And one of the things that I had to learn if I was truly going to manifest wealth for myself as a stock market trader is, that's her story. Those are her beliefs.
Yeah.
Right? And she's writing the script to her life, and it doesn't necessarily have to be my life. I can actually detach, if you will, and write the script to my life. Is that similar? That awareness that I had, is that similar to what you...
Yeah, it's usually a two-part process, and you did the first part, and that is awareness. Your conscious awareness of where some of these old beliefs and patterns and habits are coming from, really, is the first step. You want to be able to notice that they're there so that you can realize, that's not me. And anytime that something starts to happen in your life where you're thinking, oh, I'm starting to follow down that path, you can catch it in that moment and step aside. Second piece usually is you want to address it in some way, shape, or form. Right? So you want to take action on it. It's not just awareness, it's also taking action. So usually when people are taking action on it with me, we're doing specific sessions to unplug them from that kind of patterning or habit. Well,
you've got to come back to this show. We've just got about 2 minutes left. I do this show because I love trading in the stock market. I think it's the greatest thing. You don't have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars to get started. And I absolutely love it when my students are successful and make money. What drives you with the work that you do?
I realized when I was 15 that I wanted to create as much positive change on this planet as possible with my life. And I realized that one of the ways to do that is to work with people who are going to help other people. So if I can free people to be the most powerful, empowered self so that they can live the life they want to live and do what they came here to do, then I know that I'm making exponential change on the planet.
That's really wonderful. And yet another way that you and I are in sync. Thank you so much for stopping in here today. I know it's a stock trading show, but sometimes we do really have to talk about the game behind the game. If people want to learn more about you, where should they go?
In fact, I'll give them a free gift. I'll give them a free course so they can go to www.danagarrison.com/gift.
Dana Garrison, you are a gift. Thank you for stopping by today.
Thanks for having me, love.
Thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Dana Garrison and the inner game of wealth. Remember, financial success is not just about achieving in the external world. For many of us, we have to play and examine the inner game of wealth so that we can be successful in the inside. And that's something that a lot of financial gurus and stock market gurus will not share with you, the inner transformation that we need to make in order to help contribute to the world and live the largest life that we can possibly live. Join me next time right here on Trading Stocks Made Easy, because you deserve to be wealthy so that you can help yourself, your family, and contribute to the world. Tyrone Jackson saying, see you next time.
You've been listening to the Trading Stocks Made Easy podcast. Be sure to rate and review our show on iTunes. While you're on iTunes, be sure to click the subscribe button and you'll automatically receive our next episode.